Over. I was hauling my tool bag out of my battered Ford pickup when I saw them. My clothes, my tools, my entire life, scattered across the front yard like some twisted garage sale from hell. The red flannel shirt Lauren bought me for Christmas 3 years ago hung from the mailbox like a surrender flag. My favorite wrench set sparkled in the afternoon sun, spread across the brown October grass. The neighbors were already gathering. Mrs. Feldman from next door stood on her porch in her bathrobe, coffee mug in hand, watching the show like it was primetime television. The Hendersons from across the street pretended to check their mail while craning their necks. Even old Mr. Garcia had emerged from his perpetual garage workshop to witness my public humiliation. "Well, isn't this just perfect?" I muttered, dropping my tool bag with a metallic crash that echoed through the subdivision. That's when Paige appeared. My recently divorced neighbor stepped out of her front door, arms crossed, taking in the spectacle with those sharp green eyes of hers. She was wearing yoga pants and a tank top that showed off the kind of figure that made married men like me look twice and immediately feel guilty about it. "You can move in with me," she called out, loud enough for everyone to hear. The front door of my house, my former house apparently, swung open, and Lauren emerged. My wife of 12 years looked like she'd stepped out of a courtroom drama, all sharp angles in her navy business suit, blonde hair pulled back in that severe bun she'd started wearing when she made partner at the law firm. Her face went pale when she heard Paige's offer. I looked at Lauren, then at Paige, then at the crowd of neighbors pretending not to stare. The old me would have begged. The old me would have asked what I'd done wrong, promised to change, groveled for another chance. Instead, I picked up my favorite hammer from the grass, dusted it off, and walked calmly toward Paige's house. "Finally upgrading the view," I said, loud enough for everyone to hear. Lauren's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. The crowd murmured their approval. Mrs. Feldman actually applauded, and that's how I became the villain in my own story. But let me back up. My name is Danny Kowalski, and 3 weeks ago, I thought I had a marriage. I run a home repair business, Danny's Handyman Services, which sounds more impressive than it is. Mostly, I fix leaky faucets and patch drywall for people who can't be bothered to learn how to use a screwdriver. It's honest work, but it doesn't exactly set Lauren's social circle on fire. Lauren, on the other hand, had become the golden girl of Morrison, Klein & Associates. She specialized in corporate law, worked 60-hour weeks, and came home talking about billable hours and partnership tracks. Somewhere along the way, she'd also developed an obsession with fitness that bordered on religious fervor. "I'm going to the gym," became her daily mantra. Morning, noon, night, the woman lived at peak performance fitness, like it was a second office. I should have seen the signs. The new workout clothes that cost more than my monthly truck payment. The way she started taking her phone into the bathroom. The sudden interest in protein shakes and Instagram-worthy salads. The fact that she'd stopped laughing at my jokes, stopped asking about my day, stopped looking at me like I was anything more than a piece of furniture that occasionally fixed things. But I was busy. Business was good. Too good, actually. I was booked solid through the holidays, working 12-hour days trying to keep up with demand. When you're crawling under houses fixing broken pipes, you don't have much time to notice that your wife has checked out of your marriage. The wake-up call came last Tuesday night. Lauren was in the shower, and her phone kept buzzing on the nightstand. The screen lit up with text after text, and I could see the preview lines. "Can't wait to see you tomorrow." "That thing you did with your tongue." "My place after your husband leaves for work." The contact name was just E with a fire emoji. My hands shook as I picked up the phone. I'm not proud of snooping, but when your wife is getting sexts at 11 p.m., curiosity trumps privacy. The phone wasn't even locked. Lauren had gotten careless, or maybe she wanted to get caught. The messages went back months. Photos I won't describe but can't forget. Plans for hotel meetups. Discussions about my work schedule. And worse, much worse, conversations about me. "He has no idea," Lauren had written. "Still thinks I'm at book club on Thursdays." "Does he suspect anything?" E had asked. "Danny, please. The man thinks foreplay is asking if I want a beer while he watches SportsCenter." I set the phone down carefully, like it might explode. In the bathroom, Lauren was singing, actually singing, some pop song I didn't recognize. When had she started singing in the shower again? The next morning, I followed her to the gym. Not my proudest moment, but desperate times and all that. I parked across the street and waited. At 9:47 a.m., Lauren emerged with a man I recognized as Eddie Torino, one of the trainers at Peak Performance. Eddie was everything I wasn't. 6'2", muscles like a Greek statue, perfectly styled hair, and a smile that probably cost more than my truck. I watched them walk to Eddie's BMW, a shiny black thing with custom rims and tinted windows. I watched him open her door like some kind of gentleman. I watched them drive away together, probably to some hotel where my wife would do things with him that she hadn't done with me in years. That's when I decided to key his car. I know. Keying someone's car is petty, juvenile, the kind of thing angry teenagers do. But standing there in that parking lot, watching the love of my life drive away with some muscled-up pretty boy, I felt exactly like an angry teenager. So I took my house key and dragged it along the driver's side of that BMW, from headlight to taillight, leaving a scratch deep enough to see the metal underneath. But I wasn't done. I had a can of sardines in my lunch cooler. Don't ask why, it's a weird snack habit. And I popped it open and dumped the contents into the air vents on the hood. Let's see how Mr. Perfect liked the smell of rotting fish every time he turned on the heat. I was back at work by noon, installing a ceiling fan for Mrs. Patterson on Elm Street, when my phone buzzed. Text from Lauren. "Everyone's watching you. If you embarrass me again, you'll regret it." I stared at the message for a long moment, then typed back, "Just getting started, sweetheart." The war began in earnest the next day. Lauren launched the first salvo by calling my mother. "I'm worried about Danny," she told my mom, using that concerned wife voice she'd perfected during 12 years of marriage. "He's been acting strange lately, paranoid, aggressive. I think he might be having some kind of breakdown." Mom called me 20 minutes later, her voice heavy with that particular brand of maternal worry that makes grown men feel like guilty children. "Danny, honey, Lauren says you've been acting out. Are you okay? Do you need to talk to someone?" "I'm fine, Mom. Lauren's just trying to make me look crazy because she got caught cheating." The silence on the other end of the line stretched for about 10 seconds. Then, "Oh, Danny, are you sure? Lauren seems so nice, and she's so successful." That's the thing about being the blue-collar husband of a lawyer. When the marriage goes south, everyone assumes it's your fault. You're the one who wasn't good enough, wasn't ambitious enough, wasn't sophisticated enough to keep her happy. By Thursday, Lauren had weaponized our entire social circle. She called it reaching out for support, but I called it character assassination. Our friends, well, her friends who tolerated me, started treating me like I had a contagious disease. Mike and Sarah Henderson, our next-door neighbors for 8 years, suddenly stopped waving when I pulled into the driveway. Jennifer Walsh, Lauren's college roommate who'd been to our house for dinner dozens of times, crossed the street when she saw me at the grocery store. Even my own son was starting to look at me sideways. Jake was 16, all attitude and acme, and he'd always been closer to his mother. When Lauren sat him down for one of her serious talks, I could see him starting to buy into her version of events. "Dad, Mom says you've been following her around," Jake said one evening, cornering me in the garage while I was organizing my tools, the ones I'd rescued from the front yard. "I went to her gym once, Jake, once, to see who she was screwing around with." "That's not what Mom says. She says you've been stalking her trainer, vandalizing his car, making threats." I looked at my son, my gangly, smart-mouthed, video game-obsessed son, and realized Lauren was trying to turn him against me too. The old Danny would have tried to explain, would have defended himself, would have begged Jake to believe his side of the story. The new Danny just shrugged. "Believe what you want to believe, kid. But when this is all over, remember who was lying and who was telling the truth." That weekend, I started spending time at Mickey's boxing gym downtown. I'd been an amateur boxer in my 20s, nothing special, but I could hold my own in the ring. Mickey Torino had trained me back then, and yes, before you ask, Eddie was his nephew. Small world, right? Mickey was 73 years old, built like a fire hydrant, and had the kind of face that looked like it had stopped a few too many punches. He'd been running the gym for 40 years, training everyone from Golden Gloves champions to middle-aged guys like me who needed to hit something before they lost their minds. "Heard you've been having some trouble with the missus," Mickey said, wrapping my hands before a session on the heavy bag. "You could say that, She's been getting private training sessions from your nephew. Mickey's face darkened. Eddie's a good kid, but he's got no sense when it comes to women. Always chasing after the married ones, thinks it makes him some kind of big shot. Well, he picked the wrong married woman this time. You gonna do something stupid, Danny? I threw a combination at the heavy bag, jab, cross, hook, feeling the satisfying impact travel up my arms. Define stupid, Mickey. Stupid is ending up in jail. Stupid is giving her ammunition in the divorce. Stupid is letting them win. Then I guess I'll have to be smart about it. That's when Jules Kowalski walked in. No relation, despite the name. Jules was my best friend from high school, a bartender at O'Malley's Pub, who had a talent for getting information out of drunk people and a flexible relationship with the concept of legal boundaries. Heard you join the ranks of the recently screwed over, Jules said, settling onto a bench near the ring. What's the plan? I don't have a plan. I have a target list. Jules grinned. He was one of those guys who looked like trouble even when he was standing still, thin and wiry, with dark eyes that missed nothing, and a smile that suggested he knew secrets you didn't want him to know. I like target lists. Who's first? Eddie Torino, personal trainer and professional homewrecker. Lauren thinks she's so smart, but she got sloppy. Left hotel receipts in her gym bag, forgot to delete text messages. Even saved a few photos I'm sure she wouldn't want her law partners to see. Blackmail's illegal, Danny. Who said anything about blackmail? I'm talking about public education. This is a small town, Jules. People talk. All they need is the right information to talk about. That night, I started my research. Not hacking, I'm not that smart, but good old-fashioned detective work. I followed Eddie to his apartment, a flashy place in the new development on the north side of town. I watched his routine, learned his schedule, figured out his habits. Eddie Torino was a creature of routine. Gym at 6 a.m., protein shake at the smoothie bar, lunch at the same sandwich shop every day. He drove that BMW like it was a Ferrari, parked it in the same spot at the gym, left it unlocked half the time because who's going to mess with a guy who looked like he bench-pressed small cars for fun? On Monday, I made my first real move. I waited until Eddie was in the middle of a training session with some soccer mom, then I walked into Peak Performance Fitness like I owned the place. The gym was all chrome and mirrors, with music pumping and the smell of sweat and disinfectant hanging in the air. I spotted Lauren immediately. She was on a treadmill in the back, earbuds in, completely focused on her workout. She looked good, I had to admit. The cheating had agreed with her. I walked straight up to Eddie, who was demonstrating proper squat form to a woman who was clearly more interested in his form than her own. Eddie Torino? I said loud enough for half the gym to hear. He turned and I got my first close look at the man who'd been sleeping with my wife. He was even prettier up close, the kind of guy who probably spent more on hair products than I spent on groceries. Yeah, that's me. Can I help you? Danny Kowalski. I think you know my wife. The color drained from his face. His client looked back and forth between us like she was watching a tennis match. Look, man, I don't know what you think. I don't think anything, Eddie. I know. The question is, what are we going to do about it? That's when Lauren appeared, moving faster than I'd seen her move in years. Danny, what are you doing here? Just having a conversation with your trainer, sweetheart, about proper form and technique. Eddie was trying to look tough, puffing out his chest and crossing his arms, but I could see the uncertainty in his eyes. He was used to dealing with jealous husbands who made threats and stormed off. He wasn't prepared for someone who stayed calm and spoke in conversational tones. Maybe we should take this outside, he said. Why? We're all adults here. We can have an adult conversation. By now, half the gym had stopped what they were doing to watch. Lauren was practically vibrating with rage and embarrassment. You're making a scene, she hissed. Am I? I thought I was just getting to know the man who's been getting to know my wife, in the biblical sense. That's when Eddie made his mistake. He put his hand on my shoulder, not aggressively, but in that condescending way that guys like him use when they want to show dominance, without technically starting a fight. Look, buddy, maybe you should just... I moved faster than he expected. 12 years of marriage to a lawyer had taught me a few things about leverage and pressure points. I grabbed his wrist, twisted slightly, and applied just enough pressure to make him wince. Don't touch me, Eddie, and don't call me buddy. We're not friends. I released his wrist and stepped back, smiling pleasantly. But hey, if you want to settle this like men, I'll be at Mickey's gym tomorrow night, 7 o'clock. I hear you're pretty tough when you're dealing with married women. Let's see how you do against a married man. I turned to Lauren, who looked like she wanted to disappear into the floor. See you at home, honey. We need to talk about your membership fees here. Seems like you're getting a lot more than just fitness training for your money. I walked out of the gym with every eye in the place on me, feeling better than I had in months. My phone started buzzing before I reached the parking lot. The text messages started immediately. Lauren was furious, Eddie was threatening, and half the gym members had apparently gotten my number from somewhere and were weighing in with their opinions. But the message that surprised me came from Paige, my neighbor who'd offered to let me move in. Nice show at the gym. Buy me a drink and tell me how you really plan to destroy them. I stared at the message for a long moment. Paige Morrison, no relation to Lauren's law firm, just one of those coincidences that make small towns feel even smaller. She'd moved in next door about 6 months ago, right after her divorce from some investment banker who'd run off with his secretary. Classic midlife crisis story, except Paige had come out of it looking like she'd won the lottery instead of lost a husband. I found her at O'Malley's pub, sitting in a corner booth with a martini and a smile that suggested she knew something I didn't. You're either very brave or very stupid, she said as I slid into the seat across from her. I'm going with stupid. It's been working out pretty well so far. She laughed, a genuine laugh, not the polite social laugh I'd gotten used to from Lauren's friends. I saw the whole thing from my kitchen window this morning. Lauren throwing your stuff on the lawn, you walking over to my place like you owned it. Very smooth. Thanks, I think. So what's the real plan, Danny? Because embarrassing them at the gym was just the opening act, right? I studied her face, trying to figure out what she was after. Paige was attractive in a way that Lauren had never been. Softer, more natural, with laugh lines around her eyes and curves that suggested she enjoyed food more than she enjoyed the gym. But there was something calculating in her expression, something that made me think she was playing a game I didn't understand yet. Why do you care? Because Eddie Torino is my ex-boyfriend. I nearly choked on my beer. What? We dated for about 6 months right after I moved here. He was charming, attentive, great in bed, all the things a recently divorced woman thinks she wants. Until I found out he was also charming, attentive, and great in bed with at least 3 other women at the same time. So this is about revenge for you too. This is about justice, Danny. Eddie thinks he can treat women like disposable toys, and your wife thinks she can destroy your reputation to cover up her own bad choices. They both need to learn that actions have consequences. She leaned forward and I caught a hint of her perfume, something floral and expensive that made me think of spring gardens and bad decisions. I have information you could use. Photos, text messages, financial records. Eddie's not as smart as he thinks he is, and he's definitely not as careful as he should be. What kind of information? The kind that could ruin both of them if used properly. The kind that could turn this whole situation around and make you the victim instead of the villain. I should have been suspicious. I should have asked more questions, demanded to know what she was really after. But I was angry and hurt and tired of being treated like the bad guy in my own life story. What do you want in return? Front row seats to the destruction, and maybe dinner when it's all over? We shook hands across the table, and I felt like I was signing a contract with the devil. But at that point, I was ready to make a deal with anyone who could help me get my life back. The next morning, Paige knocked on my door at 7 a.m. with a manila folder and a cup of coffee. Present for you, she said, handing me the folder. Eddie's greatest hits. Inside were printouts of text messages, bank statements, and photos that painted a picture of a man who made my wife look like an amateur in the infidelity department. Eddie had been juggling at least 5 different women over the past year, including 2 other married clients from the gym. He'd been using the same hotel room, the same restaurant, even the same lines on all of them. But the real goldmine was in the financial records. Eddie was living way above his trainer's salary, driving a BMW he couldn't afford, renting an apartment that cost more than most people's mortgages. The money was coming from somewhere, and according to Paige's research, that somewhere was the women he was sleeping with. He's basically a gigolo, Paige explained, settling onto my couch like she belonged there. These women think they're having affairs, but they're actually paying for sex. Gifts, loans, credit card payments. Eddie's been bleeding them dry. Including Lauren? especially Lauren. Check out page 12. Page 12 was a bank statement showing a $5,000 transfer from Lauren's personal account to Eddie's, dated just 2 weeks ago. The memo line read, "Personal training, advanced sessions." 5 grand for personal training? That's a lot of squats, Paige said dryly. I felt something cold and hard settle in my chest. It was one thing to know that Lauren was cheating. It was another thing entirely to know that she was paying for the privilege. "There's more," Paige continued. "Eddie's been bragging about his conquests to his friends. Apparently, he has a whole rating system for the married women he sleeps with. Your wife got an 8 out of 10. Points deducted for being too needy and clingy after sex." The cold, hard thing in my chest turned into white-hot rage. I stood up and started pacing, my hands clenched into fists. "Easy, Tiger," Paige said. "Getting angry won't help. Getting even will." "What did you have in mind?" "A little public education. See, the thing about small towns is that everyone knows everyone else's business. All we have to do is make sure the right people get the right information at the right time." Over the next hour, Paige laid out a plan that was both elegant and ruthless. We would destroy Eddie and Lauren's reputations systematically, using their own actions against them, turning their friends and colleagues into unwitting allies in their downfall. It started with Sharon Walsh, Lauren's best friend and biggest rival at the law firm. Sharon was the kind of woman who collected gossip, like some people collected stamps, and she'd been jealous of Lauren's recent success for months. I called Sharon that afternoon, using my most concerned husband voice. "Sharon, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me. Has Lauren seemed different to you lately? Distant? Secretive?" "Well, now that you mention it, she has been acting a little strange. Why?" "I think she might be having an affair with her personal trainer." The silence on the other end of the line lasted exactly 3 seconds. Then Sharon's voice dropped to that conspiratorial whisper that women use when they're about to share something delicious. "Oh my God, Danny, are you sure?" "I have proof. Photos, text messages, bank records. She's been paying him, Sharon, $5,000 for advanced training sessions." "That bitch," Sharon breathed. "She's been acting so superior lately, talking about her fitness journey and her personal growth. Meanwhile, she's paying some muscle-bound idiot to sleep with her." "I don't know what to do, Sharon. I don't want to embarrass her, but I can't pretend this isn't happening." "Don't worry about embarrassing her, Danny. She should have thought about that before she decided to cheat on you with the gym boy." By the end of the week, the gossip had spread through Lauren's social circle like wildfire. The story grew in the telling, as stories do, until Lauren wasn't just having an affair, she was funding Eddie's entire lifestyle, paying for his car, his apartment, even his clothes. The truth, as it turned out, wasn't far from the fiction. Lauren's law partners started asking questions about her recent financial decisions. Her friends started looking at her differently at social gatherings. Even her yoga instructor mentioned that she'd heard troubling rumors about Lauren's personal life. But Eddie was getting the worst of it. Word had spread through the gym that he was essentially a prostitute, trading sex for money with lonely married women. His other clients started canceling their sessions. The gym owner started asking uncomfortable questions about his relationship with the female members. By Friday, Eddie was desperate enough to show up at my house. I was in the garage, working on my truck, when I heard the BMW pull into the driveway. Through the window, I watched Eddie get out of his car and walk toward the front door, his usual swagger replaced by something that looked almost like fear. I let him ring the doorbell 3 times before I answered. "Eddie, what brings you to my neighborhood?" "We need to talk, man." "This has gone too far." "Has it? I don't think it's gone nearly far enough." He looked terrible. The pretty boy confidence was gone, replaced by dark circles under his eyes and a nervous tick in his left cheek. "Look, I know you're pissed about Lauren, but you're destroying my life here. I could lose my job, my apartment, everything." "Good. That was kind of the point." "Come on, man, be reasonable. Lauren came on to me, not the other way around. She was lonely, neglected, looking for attention. What was I supposed to do? Not sleep with her would have been a good start. Not take her money would have been even better." His face flushed. "It wasn't like that. She wanted to help me out, and I—" "You what? You thought you'd take advantage of a lonely married woman? You thought you'd turn my wife into your personal ATM? It's not that simple. It's exactly that simple, Eddie. You're a predator who targets vulnerable women, and you finally picked the wrong victim. That's when he made his second mistake. He tried to push past me into the house, probably thinking he could intimidate me on my own turf. I grabbed him by the shirt and shoved him backward, hard enough to send him stumbling off the porch and onto the front lawn. Get off my property, Eddie, and stay away from my wife. She doesn't want to stay away from me, he said, trying to recover some of his swagger. She told me things, Danny, about your marriage, about you. She said you haven't touched her in months, said you don't even try anymore. Said she was thinking about leaving you even before we got together. The words hit like physical blows, mostly because I was afraid they might be true. Lauren and I had been growing apart for months before Eddie came along. We'd been living like roommates instead of spouses, going through the motions of marriage without any of the passion or intimacy that had brought us together in the first place. But that didn't give her the right to cheat, and it sure as hell didn't give Eddie the right to profit from it. Maybe she was right, I said quietly. Maybe I wasn't the husband she needed. But you know what, Eddie? She's about to find out what it's like to lose both of us. The confrontation with Eddie had been witnessed by half the neighborhood, including Mrs. Feldman, who had apparently appointed herself the unofficial chronicler of my marital breakdown. By Saturday morning, the story had evolved into something resembling a WWE match, with me supposedly throwing Eddie off the porch and threatening to finish the job if he came back. I was drinking coffee and reading the increasingly creative versions of the story on the neighborhood Facebook page when Lauren came home. She'd been staying at her sister's house since the great lawn dumping incident, but apparently she'd decided it was time for a face-to-face confrontation. She let herself in through the front door like she still lived there, which I suppose she technically did until the divorce papers were filed. She looked like she'd been crying, which was unusual for Lauren. In 12 years of marriage, I'd seen her cry maybe 5 times, and never over something as pedestrian as hurt feelings. We need to talk, she said, settling into the chair across from me at the kitchen table. Do we? I thought you'd said everything you needed to say when you threw my stuff on the front lawn. I was angry. I wasn't thinking clearly. You were angry? You were angry? I set down my coffee cup harder than necessary. Lauren, you've been screwing around with your trainer for months, spending our money on him, lying to me, lying to our friends, trying to make me look like some kind of psychopath, and you were angry? I know how it looks, but it's not what you think. It's exactly what I think. You got bored with our marriage, found some pretty boy who made you feel young and desirable, and decided to have yourself a little midlife crisis at my expense. She flinched like I'd slapped her. It wasn't like that. Then what was it like, Lauren? Explain it to me. Help me understand how a woman who stood in front of our friends and family and promised to love, honor, and cherish me decided that paying some gym rat for sex was a reasonable alternative to, I don't know, talking to her husband about whatever problems she was having. You wouldn't have listened. Try me. She was quiet for a long moment, staring at her hands folded on the table. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. I felt invisible, Danny. In our marriage, in our life together. You'd come home from work, eat dinner, watch TV, and go to bed. We never talked about anything that mattered. We never did anything together. I felt like I was living with a stranger. So you decided to sleep with an actual stranger. I decided to feel alive again. Eddie made me feel attractive, desirable, interesting. He listened when I talked. He made me laugh. For $5,000, I'd make you laugh too. Her face hardened. That's not what that money was for. What was it for then? His rent? His car payment? His other girlfriends? He was having financial problems. I was trying to help a friend. A friend you were sleeping with. A friend who was sleeping with at least 4 other married women at the same time he was sleeping with you. The color drained from her face. That's not true. It's completely true. I have the evidence, Lauren. Text messages, photos, bank records. Eddie Torino isn't your boyfriend. He's not even your affair partner. He's a prostitute, and you're just another client. She stood up abruptly, knocking over her chair. You're lying. Am I? Call him. Ask him about Jennifer Patterson, or Susan Martinez, or Rebecca Chen. Ask him about his rating system for married women. Ask him what score he gave you. She was crying now, real tears that made her mascara run and turned her face blotchy. For a moment, I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. "Why are you doing this to me?" she whispered. "I'm not doing anything to you, Lauren. I'm just making sure everyone knows the truth about what you did to us. You're destroying my reputation, my career, my life." "No, sweetheart. You did that all by yourself. I'm just making sure you don't get to destroy mine in the process." She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand, and when she looked at me again, the vulnerability was gone, replaced by the cold calculation I'd seen her use on opposing counsel in court. "Fine. You want to play hardball? Let's play hardball. I'll file for divorce on Monday, and I'll take you for everything you're worth. The house, the business, half of everything you've ever earned. And I'll make sure everyone knows that you're an unstable, controlling, abusive husband who stalked and harassed me and my friends. Good luck with that. It's hard to claim victim status when there's a paper trail showing you paid your boyfriend $5,000 for sex. It's my word against yours. Actually, it's your bank records against your bank records. Math doesn't lie, Lauren." She stared at me for a long moment, and I could see her lawyer brain working, trying to find an angle, a loophole, some way to turn this situation to her advantage. "You used to be a good man, Danny. What happened to you?" "I got tired of being taken for granted. I got tired of being treated like a fool. I got tired of being married to a woman who thought so little of me that she'd rather pay a stranger for affection than try to fix what was broken between us." "So this is revenge. This is justice. There's a difference." She picked up her purse and headed for the door, then turned back to face me one last time. "This isn't over, Danny." "Yes, it is. You just don't know it yet." After she left, I called Paige. She answered on the first ring like she'd been waiting for my call. "How did it go?" "About as well as you'd expect. She's filing for divorce on Monday." "Perfect. That gives us the weekend to implement Phase 2. "Phase 2? "The block party, Danny. Tomorrow's the annual neighborhood block party, remember? Everyone will be there, all of Lauren's friends, all the people she's been trying to turn against you, all the neighbors who've been watching this drama unfold from their front porches." I'd completely forgotten about the block party. It was a Riverside Estates tradition, held every October in the community park at the center of the subdivision. Potluck dinner, live music from whoever's teenager had learned to play guitar that year, and enough gossip to fuel the neighborhood rumor mill for months. What did you have in mind? A little public service announcement. See, I've been busy this week, Danny, making copies, organizing files, preparing a little presentation for our neighbors about what's really been going on in their quiet little subdivision. Paige, I don't want to. Trust me. By tomorrow night, Lauren and Eddie won't be able to show their faces in this town. And you'll be the wronged husband who handled an impossible situation with dignity and class. By humiliating them in public? By telling the truth in public. There's a difference. I should have said no. I should have told Paige that I wasn't interested in public humiliation, that I just wanted my divorce and my dignity and a chance to start over somewhere else. But I was tired of being the villain in everyone else's story. I was tired of being the crazy husband, the unstable one, the man who couldn't keep his wife happy. I was ready to let the world know exactly who the real villains were. What do you need me to do? Just show up, Danny, and bring your appetite for justice. The Riverside Estates annual block party was in full swing by the time I arrived at 6 p.m. The community park was decorated with orange and yellow streamers, and the smell of grilled burgers and hot dogs filled the air. Kids ran around playing tag, while their parents clustered in small groups, drinks in hand, catching up on neighborhood gossip. I spotted Lauren immediately. She was standing near the dessert table with Sharon Walsh and Jennifer Patterson, trying to look like everything was normal. She'd done something different with her hair, softer, more like she used to wear it when we were first married, and she was wearing a sundress I'd bought her for her birthday 2 years ago. Eddie was there too, lurking near the beer cooler with a few guys I didn't recognize. He looked like he'd rather be anywhere else, but he was putting on a good show of casual confidence. Paige appeared at my elbow, carrying a plate of potato salad, and wearing a smile that made me nervous. "Ready for the show?" she whispered. "What exactly are you planning to do?" "You'll see. But first, let's mingle. Act natural. Let people see that you're not the unhinged maniac Lauren's been painting you as." For the next hour, I worked the crowd like a politician at a campaign rally. I talked to Mrs. Feldman about her garden, helped Mr. Garcia carry folding chairs from his garage, played catch with the Henderson kids. I was charming, friendly, completely normal, everything Lauren had been telling people I wasn't. I could see the confusion on people's faces. They'd been expecting the Danny that Lauren had described. Angry, unstable, potentially dangerous. Instead, they got the Danny they'd known for 8 years. The guy who fixed their leaky faucets and shoveled their driveways, and never caused any trouble. At 7:30, just as the sun was starting to set, Paige made her move. She walked over to the small stage that had been set up for the evening's entertainment, usually reserved for kids' performances and community announcements, and tapped the microphone. "Excuse me, everyone. Can I have your attention for just a moment?" The crowd turned toward the stage, curious but not alarmed. Paige was relatively new to the neighborhood, but she'd made a good impression. People liked her. "I know this is unusual, but I have something important to share with all of you. Something that affects our entire community." I felt my stomach drop. Whatever Paige was planning, it was bigger than I'd expected. As many of you know, there's been some tension in the neighborhood lately. Rumors, gossip, conflicting stories about what's been happening between some of our neighbors. I think it's time we all knew the truth. She pulled out a manila folder, the same one she'd brought to my house earlier in the week. The truth is that we have a predator living among us, someone who targets vulnerable married women, manipulates them, takes advantage of them financially and emotionally. The crowd was completely silent now. I could see Lauren's face from across the park. She looked like she was about to be sick. Eddie Torino, who some of you know as a personal trainer at Peak Performance Fitness, has been conducting affairs with at least 5 married women from our community over the past year. These aren't casual relationships, or even typical affairs. These are calculated, predatory relationships designed to extract money and gifts from his victims. Eddie started moving toward the stage, his face red with anger, but Jules appeared out of nowhere and blocked his path. I hadn't even seen Jules arrive, but there he was, arms crossed, looking like he was hoping Eddie would try something stupid. "The evidence is overwhelming," Paige continued, holding up bank statements and printouts. "Credit card payments, cash transfers, expensive gifts, all flowing from these women to Mr. Torino. In total, he's received over $30,000 from his victims in the past year alone." The crowd was buzzing now, people turning to look at Eddie, then at the women they suspected might be involved. I saw Jennifer Patterson grab her husband's arm and whisper something urgent in his ear. But the most disturbing part of this story isn't the money. It's the way Mr. Torino has been bragging about his conquests to his friends, rating these women like they're objects, sharing intimate details of their relationships, treating their pain and loneliness like a joke. Lauren was crying now, but she wasn't moving toward the stage. She was just standing there, frozen, as her entire social world collapsed around her. I'm sharing this information not to embarrass anyone, but to protect our community. These women are victims, and they deserve our support, not our judgment. But Mr. Torino is a predator, and predators thrive in silence. Paige set down the microphone and walked off the stage, leaving behind a crowd that was buzzing with shock and anger. I watched Eddie try to leave, but he was surrounded by angry husbands and curious neighbors. Someone was taking pictures with their phone. Someone else was already posting to Facebook. I found Lauren sitting alone on a bench near the playground, her face in her hands. "I'm sorry," I said, sitting down beside her. She looked up at me with red, swollen eyes. "Are you? Are you really sorry, Danny? Because it looks like you got exactly what you wanted." I wanted the truth to come out. I wanted people to know that I wasn't the villain in this story. "So you destroyed me instead." "I didn't destroy you, Lauren. You destroyed yourself. I just made sure everyone knew about it." We sat in silence for a few minutes, watching the chaos unfold across the park. Eddie had finally managed to escape, but not before someone had keyed his BMW again. And this time, it wasn't me. "What happens now?" Lauren asked. "Now you file for divorce like you promised. We split our assets, sell the house, and try to rebuild our lives separately. I'll have to leave town, change jobs, start over somewhere else. Maybe that's not such a bad thing. Maybe we both need a fresh start. She nodded, wiping her eyes with a tissue. I did love you, at the beginning, maybe even at the end. I know, I loved you too. But love isn't enough when there's no trust, no respect, no communication. We stopped being partners and started being strangers who shared a mortgage. I'm sorry, Danny, for all of it. For the cheating, for the lies, for trying to make you look crazy. You didn't deserve any of that. No, I didn't. But I probably didn't deserve 12 years with you either. We had some good times, Lauren. Let's try to remember those instead of this mess. She stood up and smoothed down her dress. I should go. I can't face these people right now. Lauren? She turned back to me. For what it's worth, you were never invisible to me. Distant, maybe. Unhappy, definitely. But never invisible. She smiled sadly. Too little, too late, I guess. I watched her walk across the park to her car, ignoring the stares and whispers that followed her. She drove away without looking back, and I knew it was the last time I'd see her as my wife. Paige appeared beside me, 2 beers in her hands. How do you feel? She asked, handing me one of the bottles. Like I just won a war I never wanted to fight. Regrets? I thought about it for a moment, watching the crowd slowly return to their normal block party activities. The kids were playing again, the adults were gossiping with renewed enthusiasm, and life was moving on. No regrets, I said finally. They made their choices. I just made sure there were consequences. So what's next for Danny Kowalski? I guess I'll find out, but first I owe you dinner. She smiled and clinked her beer bottle against mine. I know just the place. As we walked away from the chaos of the block party, I realized something had changed in me over the past few weeks. I wasn't the same man who'd found those text messages on Lauren's phone, or the same man who'd begged for scraps of attention from a woman who'd already checked out of our marriage. I wasn't a victim anymore. I wasn't a villain either, despite what the story's title suggested. I was just a man who'd refused to be taken for granted, who'd fought back when he was attacked, who'd demanded the truth in a world full of comfortable lies. I didn't just become the villain. I became the legend they'd never stop talking about.